Frank Turner, welcome to Art and Being.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing even better after I just saw your Instagram post that you're playing NoFX's last ever show.
Yes, I'm doing better after announcing that as well. It's very cool. I'm very honored by it, I should say.
Oh my God, that's, what an absolute privilege.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty kind of emotional and probably chaotic because it's NoFX, but I'm very pleased to be part of it.
Yeah, does it feel a little bit, because you've already, I guess what you thought played the last time playing with NoFX a few months ago, right?
Yeah, I had the phone call about 2 weeks ago where they were like, hey, do you want to play in October? Initially, they've been trying to get me to go just to kind of play a song with them. It's their last show, which was a huge honor, but it's like, am I going to fly all the way to LA to play one song? Do you know what I mean? But then they asked me to actually play a show and I'm like, all right, fuck it, we're going. So it's going to be cool.
That's incredible, man. So I'm gutted I'm not going to be able to be there for it. I've seen NoFX so many times, and not to not be able to see them one last time kind of sucks. But I mean, I've seen them probably 5 or 6 times, so it's
I mean, they're a hugely important band for me, and if I can be highfalutin for a second, for my generation of punk rock, I mean, they're the kings.
Yeah, I mean, I think them and Propaganda were the first punk band I ever discovered, and maybe like Fat Music for Fat People when that came out, hearing Anti-Manifesto and Kill All the White Men.
Yes, I feel like you and I are the same vintage of punk in that case.
Yeah, I mean, because that was the thing about those Fat Record compilations, they were like $8, and I couldn't afford to buy the latest Soundgarden album because I was broke as shit. So I would buy like Fat Music for Fat People and discovering like Lagwagon and A Nose for a Name, and
totally.
They totally mean a lot. But I mean, anyway, you've just released your 10th album, Undefeated.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's a huge feat.
It's a lot of records for sure.
Yeah, man. And this was the first record that you self-produced as well, right?
That's right, yeah, which was an unexpected turn. I mean, I learned how to engineer music, should we say, and produce music during the lockdowns around COVID and stuff. And my initial intention was to record other bands and not to record myself, because recording yourself is kind of potentially a bit of a minefield. Producer can often play a kind of external referee kind of role, and to work without one of those can be dangerous, should we say. But by the time we got to the point of recording this batch of songs, I was like, oh, I'm ready. I know what I'm doing. And that's not to say I'll never work with a producer again. Maybe I will down the road. But in this instance, it was like, I know what I'm doing.
What do you feel like was the main difference for you producing your own record? Was it like a lack of having that kind of like that objectivity? Was it any challenges?
I mean, to a degree. I mean, the thing is, like with technology being what it is, my band and I, we demoed the whole album 2 full times before we got to the studio. So a lot of the kind of decision-making process about things like arrangement and song structure and that kind of thing had already been done. So it was more a case of just getting fair copies down. Sometimes when you're in the studio, you're still kind of working on how the song goes. In this instance, I knew how the songs went, and it was just a case of getting them down right. But it was kind of cool doing stuff like, I mean, to get technical for a second, like comping my own vocals. It's like I've recorded enough records now that I know what I want my voice to sound like, and I know what constitutes a good take and what constitutes a bad take. So, and sometimes producers don't agree with me on that, and sometimes I get my way, and sometimes I don't. But it was kind of nice to not have anyone looking over my shoulder while we were working on that side of things.
That's incredible. I mean, you did such a phenomenal job. I'm a music producer myself, so I do it for a living, and I think the sonic aspects of this record is incredible. Like there's so
Thank you very much.
There's so many moments where, I mean, I get this on all of your records, right? There's always a couple of moments on every single record where I get like goosebumps.
Thank you.
And definitely like when Ceasefire came on for the first time, and at first when I saw the name pop up as I was driving around with my kids, by the way, my kids are massive Frank Turner fans. Like, they nice. Were all born to music. My older son was born to Van Morrison. My second child was born to one of your records.
Wow.
Positive. Yeah. He was actually born for a song for Eva May.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's very appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. And then my daughter was born to Tracy Chapman. But anyway, we were driving around listening to your new record for the first time, and Ceasefire came on. And there was this moment when it first started where I was just like, here, Frank's going to go political for a second.
I mean, between you and I, it's been slightly frustrating. I wrote the song and we recorded the song before everything that's happened in the Middle East has happened. And like, I have opinions about that and all the rest of it. I'm not sure that anyone cares or should care about my opinions about it. I'm not sure that the opinions of a English songwriter matter very much about all of that. But nevertheless, it was slightly frustrating because obviously the song is not about that situation. It was written prior to all of that happening. So I've been a little kind of wary about pushing that song too much because I don't want to kind of find myself in the middle of that argument. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a little, it's a very, very feisty debate, should we say.
But I think if anything, it makes it more powerful because when you hit play on that, like I think anyone that hits play on that song, they're expecting a certain thing, and then you just come and completely like sideswipe them with something that's deeply, deeply personal and emotional. And by the end, when you're just screaming ceasefire, it brings on a whole new meaning to what currently people around the world are screaming. And I think that contrast makes it so effective.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, 10 records in. I mean, this is incredible. Is there, like, looking back on your career, do you have like a defining moment where you feel like you're most proud of something happening?
Yeah, I mean, a few. I'm fortunate to be able to say, like, obvious ones to choose. I mean, Love Our Own Song was a big record for me just because I felt like I sort of became a proper songwriter with that record. I like Sleepers for the Week, my first album, but I was still kind of figuring out this whole singer-songwriter thing, and also like it was kind of funny, like we did the first tour for that record and it went quite well, and then we did a second tour for that record and it went less well, and there was a real sense of like, oh well, maybe that was that then, and then the thing that turned it around was the songs, in a very kind of pure kind of way, which was, so I'm always be proud of that record. In Keep My Bones, I'm proud of because it's a very fully formed album. Tape Deck Heart's my most successful record. Funnily enough, actually, like the records Be More Kind and No Man's Land, a friend of mine described them to me the other day as my walkabout records, which I quite like, and I think that in a 10 album mark, there should be some records where you try out some different stuff, whether that's sonically with Be More Kind, kind of messing around with more electronic elements, or with No Man's Land playing around with kind of historical songwriting and character songwriting and that kind of thing. So I mean, the thing is, as I'm sure like the writing, arranging, recording, mixing, mastering, the whole process of making a record is a really big one, even though the end result might be 45 minutes of music. Like each one represents a huge chunk of my life. So there aren't really any records I've made that I'm not proud of.
Yeah, I think like especially Be More Kind, like I like that sentiment of a walkabout record because your music, because it's so deeply personal, it's almost like Jeff Buckley, right? When you listen to Jeff Buckley, you can't not be engrossed in the music. You can't be drawn into the story and the emotion. And I feel like that with most of your records as well. Like I feel like when you listen to Frank Turner records, it's not background music. You don't put it on while you're vacuuming.
Well, thank you.
But one of the things that I love about Be More Kind is that it's a record that I can put on while I'm cooking dinner. You chuck it on and it just has like this good feeling about it. Like it's just, it's got like a bit of hope and it's got a bit of like joy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, it's slightly different from some of the other records I've made, but in a good way, hopefully.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, that's one of the things that I think people are so drawn to your music is how deeply personal it is. And you really like wear your heart on your sleeve. Do you feel like there's an element where, because you are so deeply personal in your music, that you have interactions with people out on the street where they feel like they know you more than they actually do, and it causes like boundary issues?
Yes, definitely. That is the thing that happens. I mean, I don't want it to be entirely negative about this. If somebody has a strong personal connection with a song that I've written or songs that I've written or whatever, that's a huge compliment, and there are many records that I have extremely personal relationships with by other people, and that are really, really important to me and all the rest of that. But there have been some occasions here and there. There's a song on Tape Deck Heart about self-harm that has got me into some pretty awkward conversations, should we say. And a sentence that I find myself saying more often than I might have expected 20 years ago is like, I am not a mental health professional. Do you know what I mean? It's like people sometimes kind of, because my email address is public domain as well, so I get a lot of emails from people, and I like it that way, and I tend to keep it that way. But people sometimes reach out to me when they're in kind of crisis spaces with their own mental health kind of thing, and it's just kind of like, man, all my songs are about how I don't know what I'm doing, dude. Like, I don't know why you think I have the answers to this. I really, really don't. And if somebody's talking about self-harm or suicidal ideation or whatever it might be, I think it's important to stress that I am an asshole with a guitar. I'm not a trained professional in dealing with these things. So, yeah, there are some moments of that. But then, I mean, by contrast, and funnily enough, last night we were in Indianapolis in the US, and I had a conversation with somebody after the show who was telling me that their their fiance had taken their own life, and that they had very happy memories of coming to my shows together. And this was the first time she'd come without a fiance, which is an incredibly heavy thing to hear. But at the same time, it was a really human moment of connection. And, you know, I gave her a big hug, and there's not a huge amount you can say in that situation. I mean, what the fuck do you say to somebody who's going through that? It's unimaginably awful, but like, hopefully there was some, the sense of connection was hopefully useful to her. I don't know. I don't want to sound pretentious in talking about this, but I don't resent that in any way. I think I feel very honored that somebody can talk to me about something like that.
Because I think that's the thing, right? Like as a music producer, when I have artists come in, it feels like for most artists, music